This is From Hero to Zero, a show about the misconception of the demise of the music industry. We talk to heroes to make sense of the alleged zero, the music business. Hi Mike, how are you?
Good, man. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
So, Mike, you've been a musician in the music business for decades, basically since the late 70s. So, where do you see the main difference about being an artist today compared to when you started, late 70s, early 80s?
For me, believe it or not, it hasn't changed that much. Not the way I look at music, and also even career-wise. I mean, it's just, maybe it's because jazz, it's kind of not rock and roll and not that kind of audience, and not kind of, it's more a kind of devoted people that are really into the music and to instrumental music largely. And so that it doesn't change in terms of it comes up and down all the time in terms of, what happens in terms of sales of records or people that show up at gigs, and it's always been, basically it's been pretty consistent and really good. Record stuff is harder because of YouTube, because of sometimes it's harder to get people out for some types of music. But jazz is, people want to hear it live, and it's usually large clubs, sometimes festivals, and then festivals is a lot of people, a lot more people, and then they have a bunch of different groups in there. But it's been, and the main thing about music for me is it doesn't matter to me. I mean, if I'm playing, I like to play at this little place, the 55 Bar. I've been doing it for 30 years. When I was playing with Miles, when there's 30 people in there, it's a crowd. It's a small place, and I think they can fit like 50 at a time, or maybe a little less. And it's a groove. It's one of my favorite gigs to play. And sometimes late at night when we're playing, there's 10 people there, and the band is killing. I mean, if you really want to play, it doesn't matter, man. None of that matters. It's not a different environment than it used to be.
Do you see a difference in the age groups that come to the concerts?
A little bit, but not extremely, because it's some of the same people that used to show up years ago. But sometimes there's younger people, and sometimes it's older people, kind of older, around my age, So it's pretty diverse. It depends. It's weird. Like, so there are times when I'm playing at certain places, in New York, for instance, a lot more young people. Sometimes in the States it's like that, or sometimes it's people that are just more like been jazz fans forever, or whatever we do, which is a little bit of this and a little bit of that, basically jazz, but it's instrumental music.
Interesting.
And but it's got a pretty just cool following. I mean, some of the people that show up are some of the nicest people, and that's amazing.
So good. Do you get to talk to them after the gigs?
I
I
always do. Like, I'm signing, selling. I've always got CDs with me. I'm signing CDs and trying to do that, and then talk to people afterwards. Yeah, it's great.
How has technology changed the way you are a musician? You mentioned record sales went down since you started playing, and since you started being a musician.
Everybody's has, of course, as you know, because of well, basically, it's not so much that people are listening less, but they're buying less. In other words, they're stealing a lot of stuff, and unfortunately, that's the problem. One of the problems with the technology. There's a lot of great things about it, and it's as profoundly great it is. it's equally as bad. There's an equal downside to technology, unfortunately. And people are just becoming aware of it now, how social media, which I always thought was a hugely gossip kind of thing, has gotten nastier and nastier, you know. It's so easy to just put anything up there, there's nothing restricted. So they got to get a handle on some of that stuff. And then YouTube, it certainly wasn't the intended, the intent of people that were developing all that stuff. But they are causing big problems with the arts, I think, in terms of getting paid for what you're supposed to get for publishing or for photography or for writing, you know. All that stuff is all of a sudden free, or movies for that matter. It's all, so they got to get a handle on it. I think some of the internet companies and some of, you know, Google, and there's some cheap motherfuckers sometimes, and because they should be hiring more people to police that stuff, and they don't want to. It's not like I don't think they're hurting too bad in terms of their money. I think they're doing okay. So they could, you know, protect and also divvy it up a little bit. When they see a bunch of stuff on YouTube, they could pay people. You get to monetize stuff sometimes. It's very, very minimal. It's a very small fraction of what they make. But to give you an example, if someone just shoots this gig tonight with a cell phone, and they monetize it, they get the bread. We don't get shit. That's how this works, or doesn't work. It's totally should be completely illegal, but no one wants to touch them because they get big political things, and there's so many good things about all that stuff. That's wonderful, but not. I'm not a big fan of YouTube or Facebook and all that aspect of it.
You just mentioned there might be good things. What is one good thing that benefits you as a musician?
As a musician, well, some of the recording stuff it's a lot of people prefer taping, you know, and I do too. I'm one of those guys that likes the aspect of tape, but there are some very cool things about digital recording, and it's getting better all the time, so it sounds better. So the problem with it is that you can overdo it. You know, you can fix things too much, and music starts sounding too perfect, and it doesn't sound human enough. But you just have to watch out for that. When I'm doing a record, I try to do it live in the studio with everybody there at the same time, especially the kind of music we play, which is so conversational and so kind of in the moment. And then there's ability to fix stuff, which is good, and so in some ways it's practically, in a practical sense, it's kind of cool. And so there's some, you know, and cool stuff. There's a lot of stuff that's available for people, but I wish there was, sometimes almost too much. You know, that's the other side. There's so much music available in a cloud or whatever the hell they call it, and it's too many choices, you know. I remember, I think it was Dave Liebman, who's an amazing saxophone player, said, I played with Miles for years, and he's just a phenomenal genius. But he said no one should have more than 3 CDs at once, so you can get into the music. Now you lose track, you know, you go from this to that so easily. So there's some weird things that people are just recognizing now, which I've always thought were strange. When I was with Atlantic Records, I thought it was strange that no one was complaining about the music being free when Napster started. There were actually people that were saying, we'll do our music for free, and then people can contribute and that kind of stuff. And that didn't really work, and so a lot of the record companies that were having jazz departments weren't happening anymore. I'm fortunate to be with the really good ones still, you know, with Concord, and it's Heads Up, it's called, and I've been really lucky. But a lot of people are kind of left by the wayside, and you can get some music out there. A few people get known by YouTube, but it's very few, and it's just not fair. Like, because so much of it goes to people that don't do anything for, they just collect the bread, put it up, it's automatically, they just sit on their asses and collect big bread for all that stuff. So it's strange in a lot of ways.
Sure. But you're still around after all these decades, so you must do something very well. What do you think it is?
I don't know. I've been very fortunate, for one thing, to be able to play with all the people that I've gotten a chance to play with. And I'm also I love to play music. And I think the music in itself, no matter what the difficulties are with whatever's happening today or what was happening yesterday, it's a beautiful thing. Music is amazing. It's a language, and it's a language of the heart, as I always like to say. And so it's really, really important for people. It really enlightens people. It's a really great thing. So no matter what's going on, I'm going to try to play.
Beautiful.
No matter what. I'm going to always keep it happening as much as I can. And like I said, I've been really lucky, and lucky to play with some of these guys. Like tonight I'm doing a co-led band with Dave Weckl for this tour. And he's a phenomenal drummer. Tom Kennedy's an amazing bass player, as you know. You're being a bass player, he's a badass. And Bob Malik is one of the greatest tenor players ever, So I've been lucky. They're all kicking my ass. I feel like my ass has always been kicked by whoever I get a chance to play with. So it's very inspiring. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Beautifully said. And you have a new record, Trip.
Yeah.
So how was it different to produce Trip compared to what came before that?
It was different for a couple different reasons. One was that just to change it up, I change it up. It's a little bit different. I like to do that. So we did a slightly different studio. It's called Spin Studios out in Long Island City in New York. And then I had different people on it. Lenny White, who I don't play with much, great drummers on there. Dave Weckl on there. Dennis Chambers, those two I played with a bunch. Tom Kennedy's on there. Victor Wooten, who I played with a bunch, is on there. So there's a bunch of different people, which I like. I've been doing that for the last few records, having a bunch of different. There's a lot of variety, but I think it holds together. I work on the sequencing a lot, and I have a great cat that I work with, Jim Beard, who's an amazing keyboard player and producer, and he has produced some of my records. Really helps me big time, because otherwise I'd probably still be working on the first one. I'm one of those guys, super critical, and he always says, "Look, it's good. You go, move on, go to the next," that kind of thing. Or he really helps me just get everything together. Like I write all the tunes, and then we play them and figure out the arrangements together. So we're actually playing them instead of me just doing it all by myself at home. And then, so I get a chance to play them, and then we demo it, then we rehearse, and then we do the record. That's always been the kind of the plan. So, and everybody's live in the studio. Sometimes if somebody can't make it, they'll send an overdub kind of thing, but it's 99% live, and that was the same case with this. But the other thing with this record was that I had an accident about a year and a half ago, and I fell and broke both my arms, which is not a good thing. I don't recommend it for anybody. And it really has been an ordeal, something to keep going through, a challenge. But I want to play. So like after about 3 months, I was already playing. But I have to use glue on my right hand because I have nerve damage on this hand. So I use glue to hold the pick. And I just keep going, and it's working, which is good. And I had a doctor do some surgery so I could hold the pick and then reinforce it with this glue. I found I needed to do that. So it's working. People are saying they don't hear the difference, which is great. I, of course, hear but I'm super critical anyway. But the thing about music is that there's so many possibilities. You can play fast, you can play slow, you can play in between, you know what I mean? There's so many ways to get your heart out, and that's the most important thing. It doesn't have to be technically perfect, especially this kind of music. But of course you want it to be technically as good as you can. You don't want to, so it's been a challenge, but it's working out, which is great.
So happy to hear that.
And the main thing is, man, I think is for all of us, everybody's gonna, I actually write about this on the record. That's why I called it Trip, because I tripped, that's how it happened. So, of course, there are good trips, bad trips, you know. There's all different ways of, I mean, you know, back in the 60s, I was doing a different kind of trip. But you know, so there's all different things that go up and down in everybody's life, and the main thing is to learn how to accept support from people. I've gotten so much, you know, every time I've been down with not just this but other things in life, you get support from people that you love, you know, or close, and sometimes people you don't even know, you know, will just support you, hear about what's going on, and no matter who you are, and you have to try to accept that. And maybe they have some advice, do this, do that, take it or leave it, or, you know. But it's the love that kind of keeps you going, and also just keeping going, pure and simple. If you can do it, you got to go for it and keep it happening. You can't give up, you know. So that's kind of the way I've been rolling for a while, and so far it's been working out.
Mike,
yes,
it was a pleasure. Thank you so
man,
much. All the best.
Thank you, brother.
Looking forward to the show tonight.
Thank you,
Thanks.
man. Thank you very much. Thank you.